What is going on, Secondhand Talent family? It is Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent. Thank you to Luke Chu for the desk candy, and thank you to Mark Spusta for the lovely art. And we have with us, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Khen Rotem, a.k.a. Sagol 59. Ben, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
It's a pleasure. Been
It's
waiting a long time for that, huh?
this is something that as we'll see throughout the interview that I have been waiting a very long time for. Chen and I have known each other for several years based on some of the work that he does. And when I started Secondhand Talent, this was like, I'll be honest, this is one of the interviews that I've always wanted to do. Like, this is one of the ones for me that like has been on my list of like of folks I'd love to talk to. The reason is, folks, so not only is Khen, a.k.a. Sagol 59, an accomplished rapper, he also has worked directly with Alan Trist at Ice 9 Publishing to produce a project called Haratzam Tachat, or The Promised Land. The record we have right here. The digital album, I think, is available, but these are completely sold out. And this is a
Collector's
record.
item by now.
Yeah, exactly. And what it is, folks, is it is the Hebrew Grateful Dead project. And it is an effort by Chen to, I think, partly translate, but to me also memorialize the music of the Grateful Dead in another language. And I think it speaks volumes that he worked with Ice Nine and Alan Trist to get this project underway. I've seen him perform the music several times myself, and it's absolutely lovely. And Chen, I've really been looking forward to getting to talk to you about it for a really long time now.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled. Let's see where the road will take us.
Absolutely. So just to start with, I think I have the history down on this. You started out with hip hop, and the name Sagol 59 or Sagol 59. Where did that name come from? I think I know, but I want. Oh wait, actually, let's start with the first question. I completely forgot in my own interview. The first time you heard Secondhand Talent. Talent Yad Shnia, right?
Yeah.
Which can mean a few different things, right?
Can.
What did you think the podcast was about the first time I brought it up to you?
Since I know you a bit, I thought it was mainly about maybe comedy and music or stuff like, or just um, conversations with people that you find interesting and stuff like that, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty much what it is. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Okay, so let's get back into it. Where does the name Sagol 59 come from?
Okay, the short answer is go to Wikipedia, but the more detailed answer is that, and sometimes I've been having trouble explaining it to people who don't know what a kibbutz is in Israel and what growing up in a kibbutz, as I did, what it is. But I'll try. So
Let
I
me,
grew,
if you don't mind, if I could try to set the stage for
Yeah.
the audience, and you can correct me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So a kibbutz is a small village. It's basically a cooperative where everybody works together to make the village run. That's in essence
it exists only in Israel. There's about maybe, I don't know, 200, 300 of them spread all across the country from far north to down south. Essentially, originally a socialist idea. And I grew up in a kibbutz in central Israel, about 45 minutes north of Tel Aviv. My grandparents founded it in the late 20s, early 30s. They came to Israel, I think, in 1928 or 29, something like that. Like 20 years before State of Israel was founded. And anyway, when I grew up, today it's different because most of it is privatized. But when I grew up in the 70s, 80s, because of the whole communal concept, people didn't have a lot of private property, such as cars. Okay, um, so people didn't have washing machines and dryers in their home. There was one big laundry place, and you would just hand over once a week or once whenever you're washing, and there were people that were working there, taking turns, the staff and the kibbutz members, and they would do all the washing, all the laundry for the entire kibbutz, which is about 300 or 400 people, and then iron it, fold it, and put it back in like compartments that each member, each child, each person had. So in order to know which item of clothing belongs to which person, because sometimes there's identical names, you know, there's a few Avrams and a few Yitzchak and a few Aryeh and whatever. Uh, so I guess the most efficient way was to assign a number and a color of a sticker on your clothes and put it on all your clothes since when you're a kid until eternity. So on all of my clothes here or here, I had the same type of sticker that be ironed onto the inside of the item. And I was number 59. The background, the color was purple. And many years later, when I became a musician, I became a rapper. Most of us have stage names. So I thought Sagol 59, Purple 59 would pique the curiosity of people, and it's still happening to this day. That people ask me, why? What is this name? And people have come up with theories which are completely detached from reality about this. But that's the story. So I still have some clothes. I left the kibbutz in '95, but I still have some clothes with the sticker on it that I keep.
I mean, for being kind of like a socialist concept, that's incredibly utilitarian of you
Yes,
to just be like, listen, this is practical.
it's practical. Yes,
Yesh Sagol,
yes.
Yesh Chamishim. Like, I have the color, I have the number, I'll put it together and let
And when
people
I
come to
left,
their own
another guy
conclusion.
got, when I left, another guy, maybe 10 years or 8 years younger than me, he got assigned the number and the color. It's not a
Yeah,
rule thing.
so
But first of all, Israel is very small. So we would go to Tel Aviv a lot, or Netanya a lot, and the town. But you have to understand that the first full-length Israeli hip hop albums, CDs back then, uh, were released in like the year 2000. You know what I mean? It doesn't go back that long, like New York hip hop to the late 70s, early 80s. So everything came a bit late. I've always loved music. I don't come from an especially musical family. None of my parents or my siblings plays instruments or whatever. They all like music. And at home, when I grew up, my parents used to listen to a lot of classic old Israeli, what they called in Hebrew, Eretz Israel הישנה והטובה. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Like
yep,
army
at
troops.
the traditional classic tunes
Yeah,
that just
Israeli
kind of
stuff.
are on repeat on cycle.
And a bit of, I mean, even though they were supposed to be at that age, the Beatles age, but they didn't catch on to Beatles. They listened to older stuff, I mean, from abroad, the more folkier stuff like Pete Seeger, and the
Mhm.
Weavers and the Golden Gate Quartet, you know what I mean? And soundtracks, Side Story, and so on and so forth. So maybe some jazz, some bossa nova, uh, 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 but I got into music heavily as a teen. I mean, I was buying Frank Zappa records by 12 or 14, you know, actually buying the records and the whole progressive rock and the whole classic rock and the whole later indie stuff, um, and jazz and blues. And I think it was the late 80s that I first started to be aware that there is such thing as rap and hip hop, because we used to get a lot of volunteers from different countries. They would come and work in the kibbutz for sometimes for a year or a year and a half, and they would bring tapes or CDs. So in a way, we were even more advanced in our taste, in our musical taste, than the city people. Like I was listening to stuff like the Smiths and the Pixies and Sonic Youth and these type of things way before they were played here on the radio. And and also later on, Public Enemy, Run DMC, and later on Cypress Hill, Das FX, NWA, Ice Cube, Ice T, and all these people. So, but I wasn't thinking about making this music back then. I'm talking early
Well,
'90s.
it takes time, for those things to catch on culturally, even
Yes.
here. And I think that's a really great point. When you have people cycling in from all around the world, you're really getting, you mentioned bands like the Pixies and
Mm,
Sonic Youth. Like
mm.
these are bands that were relatively underground at that time. And yeah, that is a really well rounded, you know, big chunk of music that you named for someone who's not living anywhere near where that
I
music is
can I
being
can I
made.
can I can even go deeper, like and tell you names like Galaxy 500 and Husker Du and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and stuff like that. So uh, after my army service, I went to England. I lived in England for a while because I had a British girlfriend, and I hung out with a lot of people who were really music fanatics. And some of the bands that I knew, even UK bands, they never heard of, you know, because we were so
Yeah,
deep inside this thing.
yeah. At the
Um,
time, I think one of the bands you mentions there is the Smiths. I mean, that's a heavy pull right there.
yeah,
That's not a
I mean
band that I
they
think
obviously knew about the Smiths and Morrissey, but they never heard of Nick Cave, who was huge in Israel, huge,
I
huge. He would come
love. I
perform.
mean,
Yeah,
I love Nick Cave. I think that he's one of the best performers, around. I
yes,
saw him a few months ago, and he's just absolutely a
yeah,
force.
yes. I saw him a couple of times. Last time was in Berlin a few years ago, and it was mind blowing, mind blowing. Yes.
So you're getting all this music from all over the world coming
Mm,
in.
mm, mm.
And as you mentioned, you're traveling, you're going around to Netanya. Is the way I like to describe it to my friends in the Midwest is that Israel fits about inside of Lake Michigan.
New Jersey, yes,
Yeah,
for that matter. Yeah,
about the size of New Jersey, right? So it's
yeah.
not very big. So
No,
makes sense, going to Tel Aviv and Netanya to get these experiences. What were some of your first live music experiences
uh,
that you really were they in Israel or were they
yes,
when you
yes,
started to go
yes,
abroad?
yes. The first time I went to a festival abroad was when I was 23. Before that, we used to sneak into clubs in Tel Aviv and see all these new wave bands that would come over. Uh, well, I'll just drop names: Nina Hagen, and Ian Dury and the Blockheads, and what have you. But when I was 23, that was the first time um, I was in a music festival in England, and I got to see Nirvana, among other bands. That was a Reading festival near London. 3 days, we were completely out of our heads on Nirvana and Sonic Youth and De La Soul and Gangstar and Iggy Pop and the Sisters of Mercy and many, many, many bands. And yes, throughout the years, I saw a lot of gigs. So from Eminem to Eric Clapton uh, to BB King to the Wu Tang Clan and what have you. Everything in the middle.
Just just cuz he's one of my favorite. When did you see Eminem? That's amazing.
I saw
That's
Eminem in 2013 in Ireland near Dublin with about, I think it was 80,000 people. Uh, Marshall Mathers LP2 just came out, and me and my girlfriend were traveling in Ireland for a month, and we saw that it was this concert, and we said we gotta. And the crazy thing is that the opening acts of that day, like he performed at sundown, but before him there was a British rapper called Plan B who is very good, and then Slaughterhouse, you know them, you know the supergroup, and then Odd Future.
Yeah,
With Tyler and
what a
everybody. So,
show!
so that yeah, and Eminem came. He performed last, and it was great. But I got to see Gangstar and De La Soul and Cypress Hill and Run DMC and Wu Tang and Public Enemy and DJ Premier, and I got to see Jay Dilla. The first
Would you
time I was ever in New York. The first time I was ever in New York in 2002. I
would
caught.
you would you say that was the big influence? Go on, please.
No, I didn't know who he was. I mean, I saw that at the Knitting Factory, famed Knitting Factory. I saw there's an evening with sorry, DJ Jazzy Jeff introducing JD. I didn't know, you know. I mean, I've heard the name, but and yeah, they brought like guest rappers and whatever. But yeah, Jazzy Jeff spun, and then Dilla spun his record, and I kept the tickets. I kept, the program, whatever, and took me years because my son is a huge Dilla fan. He like idolizes him. Like a couple of years ago, I said, you know what, Tommy? I saw Dilla live. I just remembered it. Like, it didn't register in my brain, but I found the tickets and said, yeah, right. It was there. It played there. So, that was
That's
it.
that's incredible. At the
I
Knitting
didn't really
Factory
know
of
who
all
he was at the
places.
time. I've heard the name JD, I've seen him on records here and there, but he wasn't the legend that he is today.
Well, yeah,
So yeah, so
2002 was right around that
yes,
time before he
exactly.
before he became massive. So you really got, saw him right before that, which is incredible. And you mentioned something a little bit earlier, how about how like the first real Israeli hip hop records started coming out like in the early like very late 90s, early 2000s. And
Mm,
and that makes sense because,
mm.
the influence has to come, and then there have to be the folks who are jumping into the art form itself. So it kind of makes sense to me that that timeline, and even though it's getting into the ears of folks like yourself, it still does take time to turn around and make that like its own niche within, music
Yeah.
anywhere.
And
And
also I think MTV it was a big part of it because I returned from my stay in England. It was the summer of '91, and I returned to Israel, and there was MTV there. When I left, there wasn't. So people started to, yo MTV Raps, 120 minutes, all this Headbangers Ball, all the programs. So that maybe kickstarted something. You have to understand that when I recorded this year, 2025, I'm marking 25 years since my debut album. It came out in March 2000. And I, I didn't have almost anybody to be influenced by in Hebrew. Like we had to create this thing from scratch, because even the slang, even how you address things, or even maybe like cuss words, you know, it's not that I'm making a point of cussing on record or cursing on records, but even to say about something like Ben Zona, in a song, it was unheard of in Israeli music, or Maniac, or all the just
right,
tiny little
right.
things that U.S. rappers do so nonchalantly. They drop these things,
Well, yeah,
and
there's a massive cultural split, just in the language, and even kind of hearing you say that, it makes like
yeah, in
the
Hebrew, it's so weighty. It
yeah,
has a
yes,
gravitas.
yes.
It's
There's
not like you're saying
exactly.
mother. whatever. It carries weight. It's
Yeah, there's
biblical, it's
yeah,
biblical.
biblical, exactly.
You
Like,
can't just
you're
get away with it.
using yeah, and it's wild because, you really don't even think about that on top of the language differences, the sheer cultural difference as
Yes.
well, and incorporating because, you know, obviously while you're creating something new, it is coming from a foundation of what you know and what you've
Yeah.
heard, and you want it, to sort of emulate that, but at the same time, like, yeah, that must have been uncomfortable. Or I guess, yeah, it takes some time to get out. Was how what was the public reception to that first album? The Israeli public ready for it at that time?
No, because because there was no precedent. Like my album came out a couple of months before, Subliminal's album, which is way more polished and club ready. And
Subliminal and Adag Nachash are really the only
yes,
other
we
two
all
that
we all came
yeah.
out around the same time, but they were very polished. They were very club oriented, and I was in Jerusalem with an underground mentality. So I mean, the CD sold out, but there wasn't that many copies. But it's like a mark in time. I say it's like putting a flag on the moon. It's like we were there, and then I moved to a bigger label and a bigger label and whatever, and eventually caught up with J-Dub Records. So I was label mates with Matis, Matis Yao, and stuff like that. Actually, in 2004, we did in Brooklyn at Prospect Park at the Bandshell. We did like a J-Dub extravaganza. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but and we came from Israel, three rappers. Me, that I was signed to the label, and Tamer Nafar, who was an Arab from Lud, and Muki, the big name rapper from Israel, and Matis actually opened for us. He was our opening act. Nobody knew who he was. He was
Wow.
still in full Haredi
Yeah,
garb,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
apparel.
yeah. I remember.
And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he came on stage and he blew everyone away. I mean, just the sight of him, the look of him, the full on Haredi guy coming
Full
and
on.
beatboxing. So yeah, but he was opening for us back then.
I remember those early Matis shows and like when he first came onto the scene. And I remember even being American, seeing him, come out with especially with those first two albums and seeing the shows he was doing and watching him live. It was almost I don't want to say like truly, but like it was almost like an episode of the Twilight Zone where, because I grew up, something we don't really have Haredi outside
Mm,
of,
yeah.
Haaretz, but like, that's the community that I grew up in, that I was
If
raised
you
in.
want a Twilight Zone, I'll tell
Yeah.
you that I played basketball with Matis at night at the Liberty Bell Garden in Jerusalem, in Gana Paamon in Jerusalem, just me and him. When he came, because the first time he came to Jerusalem, nobody knew who he was. So I've been asked to like show him around or whatever.
That's
And we ended
and
up, I mean, he kicked my ass because he's like,
at
wait,
Ganapamo.
wait, taller. Yeah, Gana Paamon at night. And then we went to
Wow.
eat pizza at Sbarro's in Jerusalem in the Midrachov. It's like 1 o'clock, and just me and him, me and this Haredi guy, big Haredi guy, tall one.
That's
And
incredible.
they were already closing, and I said, "But you're the only kosher one here, so that's open. So maybe." And so they pulled out some pizzas, and we're sitting in the street, and So yeah, so that was
What I mean, it's what really strikes me about it
only
is
in
that I
Jerusalem. Yeah.
only in Jerusalem. I mean, and speaking of only in Jerusalem, one of my favorite concerts by a non-Israeli that I saw there was, I had the opportunity to see him in a cave
Mm.
underneath the Western
Yes,
Wall,
yes. I
and
remember that.
that was like, I mean, absolutely magical. But to hear about, getting sparrows and hanging out after playing basketball. So, did you realize at the time going back to before 2018 when this show was 2004-ish, when we're playing basketball. Did you have any, realization at the time that, these were relationships that you were forging that were going to be massive? Or was that connection still like not really apparent because of the
What
status of hip
with
hop in
Mates?
Israel?
With Mates
With
or with hip
Matis
hop
and
in
or
general?
with the other, with the rest of the Israeli rap scene and in general, did it seem like it was something that was sustainable and gonna carry forward at the
I
time?
didn't know at first. I didn't know. I just did it because I loved the genre, and I found that it's a good outlet to get some of my views out, my stories out, maybe my humor out, my political opinions out. That it's a very handy platform. I mean, I can play and I can sing, but I didn't want to mess with band. It's a big headache, and so I just did it. I just, when you're young, stupid, you don't know what you're doing, just putting stuff out. It's a bit crude, it's a bit juvenile, but you have to start somewhere. So, and little by little, like a scene formed around a few people, and I got to know them and carried on from there.
I mean, it's really, because by the time I was growing up, you talk about Subliminal and, yourself and Hadag Nachash, those were some of my early influences when I was
Mm,
listening, you
mm.
know, to hip hop growing up as a Jewish kid here in
Yeah,
America.
yeah, yeah.
And it's really wild to hear about. Well, I always kind of understood about the lack of precedent in Israeli culture for something like hip hop because it was new to American culture. I mean, it was definitely something that grew and developed in that period. From the 70s onward, and to hear it really like fully come to force. In my living memory, in 2000, I didn't realize, like, because for me, it's almost this abstract idea of when something starts. And it's rare to be able to talk to someone who
Hmm.
was not only there when it started, but was part of the beginning of it. Looking back, you mentioned at the time of this taping, it's 35 years since your first album came
25,
out.
yeah, 25, yeah.
20, excuse me,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
25 years.
I'm old, but not that old. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
duly noted. But 25 years since so from 2000 to now, I mean, do you feel the impact that you've made on Israeli hip hop culture?
Only when people tell me. I mean, yeah, really, people come up to me and say this and say that. I don't want to feel like I'm some kind of a relic of a bygone era. You know what I mean? But that's why I keep releasing stuff. I've released albums throughout the whole time. I never retired, uh, or I never started a fashion brand or went into acting or whatever. I keep releasing music, and I like to collaborate with different people from my generation, from an older generation, and with young people. Like
Well, I was gonna
I,
say you
I
put out an
record I
album with your
record
son.
songs. Yeah, and I record songs like the new EP that came out 2 weeks ago. I have a song there with a 19-year-old female rapper. And she's amazing, and she's younger than my son. So I don't care. I don't care how old you are, where you're from. If we get along and you're dope, I work with you. I mean, so I like to keep connected to what's going on because I think musicians that retire, and especially rappers that retire, it's very hard to come back. Very hard to come back, and we've seen that over and over again, especially with MCs, with rappers. People get rusty, you know,
Do
and
you
not
think that
connected.
do you think that part of it is the mentality of accepting that you were. I don't know about if accepting is the right word, but do you think that like part of the fact that you're the foundation of it, like embracing that would hinder your ability to continue to move forward and continue to produce as an artist?
I mean,
Or do you
basically,
just not wanna find out?
I embrace everything. I embrace my age. I embrace the fact that I've been around sometimes longer than the rappers that I work with. I think, it's okay. It's all good. I mean, as long as you're fresh and as long as I I work with people that they don't care. They don't care about it. They don't think about. And if they approach me with trepidation, I immediately like diffuse the situation. Like don't be timid, you know, or wary because I am whatever, or my age is whatever, or I've been doing this for some. No, speak your mind. Let's just flow. And so I'm not dealing with this. I'm not. It's not part of my psyche. It's just doing the art, and that's
I
it.
think that's a good mindset to have. Don't make it complicated for yourself. So, shifting gears just a little bit here. And we have a picture of a gentleman behind you who very
And a
much embodies.
doll, and the
Yeah.
doll. Do you see the
Oh, I
doll?
see it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see it. Who very much embodied that mentality. And I gotta ask before we get into how did the project begin, what was your introduction to the Grateful Dead? How did that happen uh, you
Yeah.
know,
Okay.
from where you were in music at the time? We're very curious. When did their music come into your life?
First of all, I've always liked a wide variety of styles and musics. And so I can listen to hardcore hip hop, gangster rap, but I can listen to Johnny Cash, and I can listen to Peter Tosh, and I can listen to Pink Floyd, and I can listen to Pixies, or to Mingus, you know, or Miles Davis. I don't discriminate. Yes, I don't discriminate. Yeah, I don't discriminate. So that's that. And Leonard Skinner and The Who and what have you. Okay, so I always like as a teenager growing up because sometimes we listen to my friends' older brothers' records. People were a bit older than us. So obviously I saw the records. I knew there was a band like that. Um, I recognized some of the songs, Trucking, you whatever, Friend of the Devil. But it never registered to me as something extraordinary or very important. Like, you have your Doobie Brothers, you have Leonard Skinner, you have the Eagles, you have the Grateful Dead. It was all lumped. Sorry, okay, Credence was all lumped into the same. The big shift happened when I met Mo, my partner, girlfriend for the last 18 years. It was an Israeli girl, originally from Ashdod. And in the late 70s, early 80s, her parents got relocated to San Francisco to work for the Sochnut, the Jewish agency, to do work for the Jewish agency and the Jewish community. And she went there as a teenager and immediately latched into a group of deadheads. So in the ensuing years, I estimate, she doesn't know, I estimate, she saw the Grateful Dead around 200 times. And the Jerry Garcia band a few dozens of times because at age 17 already, she studied at Berkeley. She did a degree at Berkeley at age 17. Or the Keystone, whatever, that was home turf.
Wow.
So she got tickets, she got tapes, she got shirts from the lot, she got sneakers, she got everything, all the paraphernalia, posters. She's been to mad shows. She's been to mad shows. Like she's been to the Reckoning shows, okay, at the Radio City Music Hall in New York, and Veneta, Oregon, and the Greek and Oakland
She was at the
Coliseum
Venetia show?
in '82, like the
Oh,
10-year
wow.
anniversary of the
Right.
yeah.
Oh,
And the
wow.
Shoreline and the Oakland Coliseum and the Greek and what have you. Most of them doesn't remember, okay, but obviously, right? I mean, probably weren't there if you can remember. But
Right, exactly. If you were there and you can remember, you weren't having a
so
good
if I
time.
would be able to turn my camera around here, there's posters on the wall from from the shows, posters
Go for
from
it.
the
Turn the.
show.
I mean, if you can, turn
And
the camera around. But like,
where is it? Yeah, no, it's far away. But
all
my whole
right,
desk here has tickets to dead shows and whatever, and we have
that's
tapes stored, like 100
incredible.
tapes, like a hand drawn, the whole thing. But I didn't know that when I met her. So once we moved in together, and I started to realize that that was her thing, and she would watch DVDs, videos of concerts, and I would tell her, it's really boring. The stuff is boring. Don't do anything. They sound out of tune. That was nearly 20 years ago, and she understood. She understood, and she said to me, "You know what? Start with the Jerry Garcia band. Start with them. Listen to them." She bought me After Midnight, like the CD, and so I started there because it's more groovy, it's more funky. They do Motown stuff and blues stuff, and then started to go down the slope, and very quickly, so I became a real like aficionado, dead aficionado. I'm not a deadhead. I I'm not claiming. She saw them live so many times. So who am I? I saw Dead and Company twice, but that's all. And maybe Mickey. But so yeah, so that was the beginning of it. And a few years later, that was exact. I mean, that was 10 years ago. I started just doodling lyrics just for fun at home, like translating, because I've done that before. I did a Tom Waits song. I did a Frank Zappa song in Hebrew. I did
Which
others.
Frank Zappa? Which Frank Zappa song? I gotta
Um,
know.
yeah, yeah. I recorded the song because I had a blues, folk, whatever reggae album that I did a few years ago. So harder than your husband. It's the second song from You Are What You Is.
Yes,
Uh,
it's one of my favorite albums. I
I'll
love
send.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So קשה יותר מבעלך. Um, yeah. So it's very funny. It's out there. I mean, it's out there. So that came out of my on my non hip hop album. It was great to do this. Um, so I've dabbled with, I did children's story, Slick Rick, hip hop. I did in Hebrew. Ice Cube, it was a good day. You know the song Yom Yafeh, right? So that
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
I took the concept and I Jerusalemized it. You know,
yeah.
Jerusalemized. Instead of about LA, I made it about Jerusalem just for fun. And so yeah, so I started, picking some songs and just started to translate. And then I said, when I had a few songs, I said to my girlfriend, "Look, I'll show you, I'll show you these things that I took Hunter's song and Jerry's song." And I said to myself, if she said it's less than brilliant, it's not. I'm not going to do anything with it. Because it's like you're going to a chief rabbi and look. It's the scriptures that I read,
Right.
that I wrote.
And
Translate the
here's my
Bible.
here's my interpretation of the halacha. Like, and
Yeah, yeah.
like,
And I
give me
showed
the
it to
opinion.
her and
Yeah,
to another veteran deadhead that's been to many shows, Israeli. I said, if they say it's good, I'm gonna do something with it. If not, that's it. Goes in the drawer. That's it, just for my
so
own. And they said, "Wow, it's very good. You should pursue it." And then by chance, I met a musician named Ami Yares in a bar in Tel Aviv. We started talking, and I said, "Yeah, yeah, let's do something with this."
what were
And we
some of
started
those?
recording the album.
What were some of those first few songs that you translated?
חבר של השטן, obviously, Friend of the Devil, um, בגשם ובקור, Cold Rain and Snow, מתוקתי, Sugary, what else is there? בלוז חדש לגמרי, New Minglewood Blues, um, uh, obviously, נחלאות בגשם השוטף, Mission in the Rain, the whole
But you
first
talk
batch of songs.
about so Nachot B'Geshem HaShotef, Mission in the Rain, and also Chaver Shel HaSatan, Friend of the
Yes,
Devil.
yes.
what I love about those 2 in particular, and I'm really glad to hear that they were part of the first batch, is that, you talk about, the Jerusalemization of the music, and I remember I don't remember who showed it to me, but I remember first hearing, Chaver Shel HaSatan,
Mm,
and I have known, I grew up listening to the Grateful Dead. My mother and my uncle went to a bunch of shows, and it was just a part of that music was a part of my life since I was a child. And I was over there and somebody showed me, and I remember it's Nasti me'elat 20 klavim be'ikvotai, which in English, I went up from I guess
lit up
I
from you.
I lit up from a lot,
Oh,
20 house, and just to think, like, and in English, of course, it's I lit up from Reno. And I just remember it flipped this switch in my brain to where I was
thank you.
like, as a huge fan of the Grateful Dead's music, all of a sudden, I found a way to relate to it in a different way.
First of all, I know that quite a few people, mostly Israelis, have gotten into the dead from listening to the Promised Land. People that maybe didn't know them or had some sort of a stigma or a preconceived notion about them, about what they are. And then they listen to these beautiful songs in Hebrew and say, gotta check this out. But I tell you, Romy, I made a few decisions when I started to do this with Ami. First of all, we're not going to attempt to emulate the Grateful Dead sound. I'm not Jerry, he's not Bobby, and whatever. We're not going because I've been to the US and in Israel too. I saw Grateful Dead cover bands, which are great. Some of them really try to duplicate the exact sound. I'm not going for it. You know, that was the first. And the second one was that I wanted to be local. I want to be Israeli. I don't want to be sitting in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or Jaffa and sing about Reno or Nevada or whatever, or California. I wanted to sound local, and I think that's the power of Tennessee, turned into Kfar Anasi,
Fantasy,
because
yeah.
and I see people like enjoying it and embracing it
It's
because
relatable.
it would be wrong, I think, to record in Jaffa and sing about Tennessee. What do I have to do with Tennessee?
And I think it adds also some real meaning to, a cover is one thing, but an adaptation is something that we really
Exactly.
don't see in
Exactly.
in music today. We do see a lot of, as you mentioned, be they cover bands, tribute bands, or just bands that cover particular Grateful Dead songs. There
Yes.
is this kind of desire to emulate directly the legacy of the Grateful Dead, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it takes a certain level of self steadiness, which I think only comes from having that experience in the music industry and having that experience, understanding what artistry is and can be, to be able to say, let's kind of make it our own thing and be true to ourselves rather than try to sing about something like you mentioned that's not even here where we are. And I think
Yeah, and yeah,
Kfar Nasi, I was just going to say, I think Kfar
yeah,
Nasi is a great example because anybody that I talk to from, here, when I'm telling them about the band, and I'm telling them about the project, that's always my example because phonetically, musically, it just makes sense. People get it. Tennessee, Kfar Nasi, like it's right there. Like maybe not Elad and Reno, but that right there to me, Kfar Nasi and Tennessee Jet is like the quintessential example of like just how great an adaptation can be when you're really trying to be true to yourself, to the spirit of the music, but not trying to copy
Yeah,
what that
I'll
is.
tell you a secret from the kitchen. I realized that if you can find the phrase that defines the song, then it's much easier to translate. Like with Sugary, I had a few options, and then Metukati, you know, or Tennessee, or or
Well, in
uh,
Matukati, let's just go on that for a second
yeah,
because I think what you do there is phenomenal. Matukati, for those who don't know, means basically
my
my sweet
sweet,
one,
yeah,
my sweet treat, right?
yes,
Um, but Sheket, it
yes,
the way that they come to instead of
yes,
shake it,
yes,
sugary, it's shake it, Matukati, and it just go even though it's a completely different meaning in
yes.
English, the vibe is right there. It's
Yeah, you can't be a
right
hundred
there.
percent. I've been doing quite a lot of translations for different, you know, this. Okay, and you cannot, especially when it's poetry like Hunter or whatever, you cannot be 100% on the exact word. You either sacrifice the meaning or sacrifice the phonetics. So either you go for the phonetic or you go for the meaning, and if you're lucky, you get both of them. So, like a song that I really like from, if I may say so, from our repertoire is Nashim Chumot Ain, which is brown-eyed women. And apart from the fact that I and Ain in Hebrew sound the same, and also, I'll tell you a secret that there's a few words that sound the same, like time and zman. Okay, lokeach את הזמן, taking my time. Okay, sound, and also yain and wine.
Yes.
Also, um, הבקבוק מלוכלך, אבל היין נקי. So, the,
It still sounds like the wine was clean.
yeah,
Like, you're
yeah, the
getting that
wine was, yeah, the
essence.
bottle
You're
was
still
dirty,
get
but
but the
the
wine was
wine.
clean.
So you have this. Once I figured these ones out, it was easier, and yeah, so I took this song because it's a song about like the prohibition era, right? So I took it to the same era, but in Israel, in Emek Hefer, where my grandparents were. So they came as pioneers, and they had to get by. You know what I mean? And my late grandfather used to make um, like limoncello. Okay, you know limoncello.
I know
Uh,
limoncello. Yeah.
so
Folks, if you don't know, Google it.
yeah,
Limoncello.
he would, because he was good with words. He named it Aronovka because his name was Aaron. Okay, so it wouldn't sell it. It would just make it at home as a hobby. So I sort of embellished the whole idea of the early kibbutzniks working and making what, it was. I mean, he did it in the 70s or 80s, way way after. So I created this story about this shack in Emek Hefer, which collapsed in the snow in 1950, which is real. 1950, all of Israel was covered with snow. Okay, and a lot of buildings collapsed. That was the only time the whole country was snow. So, tumble down shack in Bigfoot County. Exactly. So,
Yeah,
I
that
try to
okay. Now
connect
okay. Now that wow.
and
All right.
mythologize. קרס בשלג של שנת 50, like tumbled
Yeah.
down in the snow of 1950. So, like they mythologized stuff that they've never seen. So I try to mythologize this era in early pre-Israel. You know what I mean? So it's fun, and
And I
if it's convincing, it's good,
one of the ones that I think is most convincing, and it's really, where the Jerry Garcia band aspect of it shines through is Nachlaot B'Geshem Ashotef, your take on
Yeah.
Mission in the Rain.
Yes,
Um, Nachlaot is the neighborhood that I lived
yes,
in
me too.
Jerusalem,
Yeah, me too.
and it has when you talk about, Rehov Madregot, anybody,
That's my street. Yes, that was my street.
anybody who's been there, when you hear the way that you sing that
Yes,
song,
yes,
it's the same way that I would imagine anybody who grew up in the Mission District in San Francisco would think
yes.
about it when they hear
You got it. You got
Mission
it.
in the Rain. Like, and it really does, you know, hit that emulation on the head. And a note real quick on Nashim Chumotayin. One of the things that I love is, you know, you mentioned, I believe you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have a choice to either sacrifice the something along the lines of either the context or the
Yeah,
verbiage.
go
Like
for the
it's
phonetics or go
one
for the idea.
exactly. And you know, there's some words in Hebrew which, you know, maybe we're too lazy to translate, maybe, you know, we don't want to, but the lyric "Habakuk meluchlach habal hayayin
Yain
naki,"
naki.
and then Nashim chumot ayin v'kos grenadin. I like to me that's like the one of the it's which is the other part of the lyric, which is, you know, brown-eyed women and red
Red
grenadine,
grenadine.
but and a cup of grenadine. Like, what do we translate that to? So we could either try super hard to figure out a word for grenadine, or just
Yeah.
go with it.
If you're a
And
bartender in Israel, you know what grenadine is.
exactly.
But you know, I'll dive a bit deeper into Mission in the Rain. I think I employed my skills as a rapper, as an MC, because walking along in the mission in the rain, נחלאות בגשם השוטף, so mission, geshem, located exactly, that's MF Doom type shit, you know? Sorry, yeah. Like geshem and mission are located exactly at the same spot in each sentence. Okay? So you understand? So I wasn't trying to insert it as in the original, but I tried it to fall exactly in place with the Hebrew stuff. נחלאות בגשם השוטף, walking around in a mission in the rain. Also
So,
השוטף in the rain. So it sound, I really tried to, you know, make it sound natural.
well, it show. I mean, it's funny to say it shows when you're talking
Yeah,
about something that
yeah,
you listen to, but
yeah.
I think that, you know, any deadhead who's at least somewhat familiar with these songs will understand what they're about when they hear your versions of them. And I think that's pretty magical. I mean, for me personally, it helped me learn the language because I knew every single lyric to all of these songs before, you know, ever learning a word of Hebrew. And all of a sudden, I'm listening to, you know, Nasti Me'ela Taslim Kavim B'Ikvotai, and I'm thinking of Friend of the Devil of the
Yeah,
lyrics, and I'm like, oh wait, I'm understanding it now. I'm
yeah.
understanding the correlation. And the other part of it, one thing which was really special to me, I don't know if you remember, but about 7 or 8 years ago, my mom came over to visit,
Mm,
and we went to one of the shows together. And she, you know, she's seen, you know, the Grateful Dead with Jerry a bunch of times, and you know, was on the lot selling teas like I mentioned earlier. And for her, as someone, you know, who was over there, you know, in '86, and, you know, spent a lot of time over there, to come back 30 years later and, you know, hear what you were doing, it was it was really magical. I mean, to be with someone who lived and experienced the music, who taught me the music, and getting to expose the music this same music to them in a way completely different, yet at the same time so familiar. It was really, really an incredible opportunity.
mm. Yeah, and you know, just one last note about Mission in the Rain. I usually don't get emotional when I write or perform songs. Uh, but this one, when I translated it, also at the rare times that I'm playing and singing it, it's a song that's deeply emotional for me. Because first of all, I know it was deeply emotional for Jerry. And also, you know, I moved to Jerusalem. My son was born in Rehov HaMadrigot. I lived in Rehov HaMadrigot 27, and later on, I divorced in Jerusalem and I lived in Jerusalem and I started my career in Jerusalem. And I did a lot of songs. So it was very personal. It doesn't, it rarely happens to me that I get emotional writing or performing a song, but this song is, and at the end of our first US tour, I think it was 2016 or 15, we had a chance to do a couple of songs at the Relics offices in New York, in Manhattan. And we just came in. We were before the flight home and just gave us guitars, set up the cameras, brought the people in, and like a tiny desk thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we just did a few songs and we left. So from from all the songs that we did there, they chose Nachlaot B'Geshem HaShotef. And I was even so excited singing it that I replicated, I screwed up some of the order of the song or the verses. They don't know. They didn't know. It
Right.
was me. But you can look for it on YouTube. It's beautiful. We just at the Relics offices doing a tiny desk. But that was the one song they chose from our set to put on their website and whatever. So probably has that emotional pull.
That's really incredible the way those things work out that, I'm sure you didn't even consider, like, I hope it's this one that they pick or anything like that, given the situation and all the travel and all of that. But to come back and that be the one, especially with that emotion behind it, I think that's
Yes.
I just think it's incredible to be able to, you know, bring that all around. And then I guess the next question I would have would be how did it come about, the process to, or the idea to, you know what, let's make an album of this music, like, how, because I don't know what it's like to get, uh, publishers clearing rights for songs or anything like that. I mean, were there any specific, like, first of all, when did the idea for a record come about? And then second, were there any, like, specific hoops or things like that you had to
Mm.
jump through to get it done?
Okay. So me and my friend Ami starting to record at his flat in Jaffa. I mean, the original album with the original songs were recorded in a mamad, in a safe room in Jaffa, in maybe third
Bemet?
floor or something. Yes,
Wow.
was not a professional recording studio, and we put a big mattress on the window so nothing would come in or go out. And like musicians would come and go and record their parts, whatever. Some of them I didn't know, some of them I haven't even met. And during the process, said, yeah, yeah, I want to release it as an album. Let's see. And when we were done, um, or in the process, during the process, I said, because legally I didn't have to ask for permission because it's covers. I just had to, like, as far as the rights, like, I mean, the writers get all the royalties from this.
Right.
We don't get, we yielded. How do you say? We yielded. You can't get copyright on covers, and because it's translations, I said, okay, I don't want anything. I just want to do this. So formally, I didn't have to get any approval, but I wanted to at least let them know, let the band know, or the representatives, that I'm doing such a project. So I found an email and I wrote an email. Simple as that. And I think 48 hours later, which I'm telling you from my experience, doesn't happen never in showbiz,
No,
ever.
אף פעם
Doesn't
לא.
ever happen
Never.
in showbiz.
Never, never, never.
About 48 hours later, maybe 3 days later, I'm getting an email back from Alan Trist, who's been with the band since 1969, and he's in charge of Ice Nine Publishing. And they said, yes, we're delighted and we're thrilled that you're doing this. And go ahead and just maybe send us some stuff when you're done. We'd like to hear it, but you have our blessing and our approval. And so that gave, it was very important to me to get that, stamp of approval from the band. And later on, Jerry's wife and his daughter, Manasha and Keelan, they got the album. They wrote to me. It's beautiful. We love it. We're listening to, that's mind blowing, and
I
so
mean, that's
so yeah.
incredible.
And after
I,
that came out, I keep recording songs. We have a few dozens of songs now on Bandcamp, in EPs and singles and some free downloads and whatever. I kept, finding songs to translate and record, and you know, by now there's far more songs outside of the original record, and yeah.
so first of all, you're absolutely right. Within 48 hours is like that's not a real thing that happens in this industry. Like for especially with an organization, like the Grateful Dead to hear back from an email. I mean, but to hear that acknowledgement was just that was the validation that you were
Yes,
seeking.
and they didn't hear one note or read one word. You know what I mean? So just the idea of this being done, maybe was so
And
puzzling or baffling to them.
well, I was going to ask, to your knowledge, has this been done in any other language for especially for this amount of? I mean, we talk about the album, which I have right here, but like you mentioned, we have so many more songs on the Bandcamp, and folks, the link for the Bandcamp is going to be in the description of this episode. But for example, taken off the name that Jerry and David put together, the Pita tapes,
Mhm.
and other collections like that, as well as some live recordings.
Yes,
Um, that's
I've I've done some research in the years following the release of the album, just because I was curious. I remember there was something in Japanese, but not a whole album. I think just one song someone did in Japanese. And I think there was something, if I'm not mistaken, Croatia or something, that they did a song in their language. But you know, I'm not 100% sure, but I think of its type, it's probably the first like full length, like album of translated dead song.
So you call the album the name of the band, the Promised Land, Aratz Muftachat, which is the name of one of my favorite Jerry Garcia band songs. Is there a reason that song isn't on the album?
Oh, first of all, it's a Chuck Berry song,
Ah, no,
and
fair.
and no, it doesn't mean a lot, but and it's a song. It's so filled with American names of American cities that I
Yes, my
thought,
home in Norfolk, Virginia. Yeah,
yes, it's all the song. All the song
yeah,
is so.
true.
But anyway, I had a few other options which were very silly and juvenile, and my girlfriend said, "No, no, Promised Land." Because it's also, it encompasses everything. It's a song that the Dead used to do, and it's here, it's Israel, and so hence the artwork and everything. You see the sabras there on the record. And yeah, we try to portray an Israeli sort of maybe desert sort of landscape.
I mean, it's with the purple buggy and everything. I mean,
Yes.
everything about it, it just screams Grateful Dead to me. Everything about it, and I think that's, I mean, also very similar to the vein of how the Grateful Dead operated. There's no song called American Beauty. There's no
Yes.
song called Working
Yeah.
Man's Dead. There's
Exactly.
no song called From the Mars Hotel or Go to
Oxamoxo.
Heaven. Oh,
Oxamoxo.
Aoxamoxoa, exactly. And I think that's really in keeping with the now that this actually just occurred to me. It's really in keeping with the tradition. I cannot think of a Grateful Dead album that It's actually the name of one of their songs. Hmm.
Terrapin Station,
Okay, but talk about Terrapin
and
Station.
yeah, and Shakedown Street. I think that's the only
Yeah,
one. So
might be
that's
the
the only
only
one.
two. Yeah,
But another point. Look, we used the Steely on the cover. I mean, you cannot do that with Kiss or AC/DC or Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd.
Fish.
You know,
Yeah,
or,
I mean,
I
they
don't know
call it.
about Fish, but
No, they call it that's one of the big things. I mean,
I mean, use
on
it,
lot
use
for
it.
merch.
Or
Like,
the
when
Grateful
you
Dead, or the Rolling Stones lips and tongue logo. But the Dead, it's a whole different story, whole
a
different
lot
vibe.
more a lot more chill, a lot more chill. What was the critical reception? So the album came out in 2017 or 2018?
No, 2015.
2015,
Yeah, yeah,
2015.
yeah, yeah. 10 years.
What was the what was the critical reception to the album?
A thing like a music critic doesn't really exist anymore. But the fact that we got invited, first of all, Friend of the Devil got playlisted in Galei Tzahal, Galgalatz, which is like
Wow.
the leading radio station in Israel. Mm, my inside sources told me that most of the people there, they're very young music editors, they didn't realize it was a cover. You understand? They just heard the song and they say, "Oh, it's beautiful. We're going to put it on the radio." A lot of people there in the station, they didn't realize it was a cover. Imagine that. And we got to play a live jam on Galei Tzahal. I mean, all, all the CDs are sold out, all the LPs are sold out. So that speaks. I've been to the US to tour 5 or 6 times now. Last time was last June. I was in Boulder, Colorado. Did thing. And so, yeah, it's been way, way over from what I imagined, tens of thousands of downloads. I'm not checking the stats, but near between 60 and 70,000 thousands download. You know what I mean?
I mean,
So
that little thing you said there about how they didn't know that it was a cover, that they thought it was an original tune. I think that is like the biggest testament to a band's or an
yes,
individual's creativity is that a cover is so or an adaptation is so good that they think it's an original. And I I think that just really, really hits the nail on the head, so to speak, for what this album encompasses. I do have one question on it.
mhm.
So in the track listing for the album, now some of the songs on here, just folks, for those of you who don't know, we have Bertha, which I love to play on words there for the name Neta, which is like
Yes,
with a sapling, which
yeah, yeah.
then Sugary or Matukati, me and my uncle, Aniva Adodshali, Chaver Shel Satan, friend of the devil, Ani Yodea, I know you rider, which a lot of liberties taken with the translation of that, but it captures the spirit of it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
really the amazing part. Um, Nachlot Begezhem HaShotef, Mission in the Rain, Nahar Shachor Kazefet, Black Muddy River, which is probably after Mission in the Rain, Nachlot Begezhem HaShotef, it's probably my favorite. Um, Nashim Chumotayin and Gal Shaket. But there are some extra songs. If you go on Bandcamp and look at the album, there's rather than Dark Star, there's an intro and outro called, I
Mm.
think Bright Moon and Dark Moon.
Uh,
Um,
Bright
I
Star, Dark Moon, something like that.
something like that. And I was very
Yeah,
curious always, like where that concept came from to be on the Bandcamp album. Which, to be fair, there does also have a few other songs that are
yeah.
not
I
on the
tell you,
record
the
just for
CD
space.
when it came out on CD, it had 16 songs. It's because for a technical reason, the CD can accommodate more music. And when we did the vinyl LP, we had time restraints on the record. So I had to choose and really, tough choice, which songs to place. 42, 43 minutes tops, so there's less songs on the vinyl than on the CD, and obviously Bandcamp is infinite. But those two tracks, instrumental tracks, I recorded by myself at home, played all the instruments. It was just an experiment, with the vibe of Darkstar, but it's not really. And I play everything there. And I just thought that to give a hint and to start off and to close off the album, make it whole, make it complete. That was what came into my mind. I, I wanted a name that gives a hint to the Dead's legacy.
And it's very similar, I think, in a lot of ways to how the Dead during shows would do the first verse and then the second verse later
Yeah.
on in the show.
No, yeah, I didn't think
Um,
about it. Yeah.
but that's what it always reminded me of, how they would, do Dark Star and then like Steven and the 11 and then drums and space and cryptical envelopment and then come back into the second
Or,
verse
or, or
later.
start with Sugar Magnolia and then three
Yeah,
hours later, Sunshine Daydream. Like
yeah,
one of the shows that I've seen of Dead and Company.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, exactly that sort of thing, which it really feels like. I mean, as they say in The Big Lebowski, it really ties the room together. It really makes
Yeah,
it
and
feel like
I
not
just want
that.
to make
Yeah.
yeah, I want to make
Well,
one
yeah.
point uh, to our viewers, listeners. The Grateful Dead, when they were active, um, were never big in Israel. Most Israelis have never heard of them. Some people who have heard of them think that it's a thought that it was a heavy metal band or whatever. They were never played on daytime radio in Israel, and apart from maybe one guy who sort of played them at night on the army radio station because he was a deadhead. I never heard as a kid, as a teenager growing up, I never heard the Grateful Dead on the radio in Israel. And so they weren't big. They weren't big. I think my theory is that Israelis of a certain age, certain generation, always gravitated more towards British bands rather than American bands. So also um, the Allman Brothers and Little Feat, and all these Marshall Tucker band, all these bands were hardly known apart from real music lovers, because Israelis went with the Police, Dire Straits, Genesis, Yes, Pink Floyd, King Crimson, all these bands. More
First of
gravitated towards
all,
European stuff.
I mean, it makes sense because that's what you're closer to.
Yes,
But it's the same here. Is that I remember being a kid and going through my mom's record collection and finding Waiting for Columbus and some Allman Brothers records and a lot of the bands you just mentioned. And I'm very lucky that I found that music when I did, because I think it was very much the same up until when I was growing up in the 90s here, where a lot of what we would hear first is Pink Floyd, is Led
think so.
Zeppelin, is a lot of that.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, that Britpop UK invasion, the Beatles. I mean, you still couldn't get away from the Beatles to this day. And growing up, you bring up the Marshall Tucker Band, which, I mean, Can't You See, I think is one of the great songs of all time. And I didn't know that song until I was in my 20s. And it's wild because it's true here as well, where our
Yeah, but
first.
but they were played a lot. I mean, you had a lot of stations.
Yeah,
You had
but
a lot of
but
variety.
for people who were like, but the cool stuff to listen to, was like Zeppelin 4, was like Metallica only became the cooler thing, or only became the cooler thing to listen to because of AC/DC. Like, it wasn't the other way around. It was always AC/DC first. It was always High
And I'm
Voltage,
talking,
Back in Black.
but bands that were huge in the U.S. I'm talking Kiss, I'm talking Van Halen.
Me too.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm talking Cheap Trick. I'm talking Grand Funk Railroad. No airplay. Most Israelis didn't
And
hear them in
again,
real time. Yeah,
great example. Grand Funk
yeah.
Railroad was one of my first 3 concerts as a kid. And I
Michigan.
w and I was very, very lucky to see, it was I think Blue Oyster Cult, Grand Funk Railroad, and Rare
Yes,
Earth.
yes.
I mean, 3 incredible, incredible bands, and I have my parents to thank for that because
Good for you. Yeah.
what my friends were listening to was AC/DC, was Led
Mhm.
Zeppelin, was I mean, so it was it's really
Not
interesting
bad
to hear
either.
that.
Not bad either.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with it. But there is and was so much great American music being created around the same time that even growing up in the 90s, we weren't exposed to right away. It still almost came secondary to the Britpop and the UK invasions era of music. So I think it's really interesting to hear that parallel.
Yeah, a lot of Americans still think that the Oasis is a one-hit wonder, right? I mean, and they never heard of Blur or Pulp, or The Cure. Uh, maybe not you, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for all of our viewers, listeners, and readers who know the Gorillas but don't know Blur, do yourselves a favor and go check out what Blur is. But yes, I absolutely understand what you're saying. Layers, like Shrek said, like an onion.
Yes, like and also bands that didn't really break big in the U.S. but were massive in Europe and Israel, like Madness, like stuff like that. That were huge.
13th floor elevators,
Ah,
strawberry
no,
alarm
no.
clock. I
You're talking
mean,
underground '60s, mid '60s underground from Texas. It's like okay, yeah, but
but this is again like, where I find myself in a place where I'm very blessed and very lucky to have
yeah,
grown
sure,
up with this because
sure.
I don't think like I feel like had I not grown up with the music that I did, if somebody said strawberry alarm clock to me, I'd be like, is that the secret phrase of the day or what are we what's going on? Like
West
what are you
Coast
talking about?
experimental pop group.
Yeah, and they are incredible.
We
I mean,
have all the
the
vinyls.
Chocolate Watch
Yeah,
Band
the
and
United States of America.
I mean, there's
We've got all this
so
stuff.
there's so much of it. And then just getting back to the project,
Yeah, yeah.
did you hear back from them once the album had been put out? Or was it something where like you got the acknowledgement for the go ahead from Alan and then afterwards they were like, this exists, we gave our go ahead, or did they reach back out to you once the
I,
album was
I,
put out?
as yeah, I heard from Jerry's wife, from Anasha, and from his daughter, Keelan. They wrote to me several times. Every time something new was released, sent it to them. And obviously, and we were mentioned a couple of times on the Dead's website and, the YouTube, the covers, the Dead covers thing. And we're on Dead Base. We mentioned there, so yeah, I never thought, like, I take everything in life and in music as a bonus. I never thought that it would sell out and I would be going regularly to the US to perform it. And, in 2020, I performed this stuff at the APAC convention in Washington, D.C. 2 shows, 17,000 people. Yeah. So who
I
thought? Who
I just
thought?
think it's a beautiful thing whether you know the language or not.
Exactly.
If you're a Deadhead, it's something worth checking out. It's just a pure from the heart interpretation of the words of Robert and Jerry,
Hmm.
and it really does come across that way. And thinking back to your comment earlier about how the radio station thought it was an original song, I can kind of understand that because I think of especially Begeshem of Akor, Cold Rain and Snow, that synth intro that you lay down in the very beginning of that song is very different to how the recording is
Yeah, I think it's
by
a, I don't
it's
know,
a
Hammond or
yeah, a
Farfisa or
Hammond or
something.
B3, something like that. This really like clavy, loud sound, and it makes it, yeah, not a cover, but an adaptation. It makes it its own, and it's a really beautiful
Yes,
thing.
yes, yes. And people just came in. Some of them didn't know the originals. I played them, whatever it's supposed to be, and we were not trying to emulate anything, and it was all. And I think you can hear the excitement also in the recording. You know, that it's not done in a sterile studio, and sometimes we're playing together, and it's not sterile in any way.
No, not at
It
all.
has grit.
And I think what really stands testament to that is the fact that how it translates live.
Yes.
I've had the fortune, I've seen you play either solo or with the band 3 or 4 times playing this music. And guys out, ladies and gentlemen out there, it is a show. I mean, it is amazing to to get down and get into the music in just a completely different way.
I think the
And
the vocal performance, my vocal performance, if I may say so, is much better now than when we recorded the song, because you get into the songs and you learn how to sing it. Maybe a bit like Jerry, Bobby. You hear Bobby with the Wolf Brothers today. I think his singing is superb. It's way better than the 60s and 70s. That's just my opinion. The way he sings now, with the gravitas, of all these years, the experience, and he's really getting into the heart, the core of the song. That's what I think anyway.
I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself. I mean, I think one of the standout memories of seeing Bobby in particular perform in my life was when in 2016 in Nashville, he came out with Fish and sang Fish's song "Miss You." And you're smiling at me from your picture frame, and I miss you. And it really, if you listen to the lyrics of that song or you listen to a recording of it, 10/16/16 Nashville, it really sounds like he's singing it directly to Jerry. And even though Fish is the band playing their own song and he's singing it, he makes it his own. And it's something that is rare to accomplish, and it's quite wonderful that that's what comes to mind when I think of your record is
Thank you.
how,
Yeah, the same when I heard Bobby singing in City Field in Queens, uh, and Days Between close out the show. It was wow.
you know
With his
yeah,
age and with
there's
his
some things
persona.
like Bakbukian, there's some things that with age that just get better and sweeter
משתבח
over.
כמו יין טוב.
I mean, it's just like that, and it should always be, and it should always be.
Mhm.
So I think we've come to about the conclusion of our interview here. I just wanted to ask before we end the episode if there's any final words you'd like to leave the audience with.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the first time that you're hearing about this, just go to Bandcamp, find The Promised Land. There's many songs there we haven't even discussed, like The Monkey and the Engineer and Dire Wolf and Mississippi Half Step and Deep Ellum Blues and Must Have Been the Roses that we actually recorded in the US one night at 3 a.m. at some studio. So yeah, just check it out. Just listen to it. See if you like it. I mean, and we will continue. We will survive and perform and have a good
And
time.
And next time you come back to the States, please come to Chicago. You know,
Definitely.
we'll talk about it. But I mean,
Yeah.
we gotta have you
Yeah.
over here,
Let's
ladies
work
and
to make this happen.
absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, Khen Rotem, Sagol 59, the Promised Land. Thank you so much for being on the show. This is Steiner from Secondhand Talent, and we will see
Shalom.
you.
Shalom. The most important. Shalom.
Shalom leolam. Peace, and we'll see you next week. Stay on real quick. We're gonna